2022 is coming to a close, and as we reflect back on everything that happened with the Total War series over the last 12 months, I think it's fair to say things didn't go as smoothly as we might have liked. It might be a bit generous. Immortal Empires has proven to be a very troublesome addition to the series. Content development has slowed past the point the developers themselves would have preferred, they've readily admitted that, and even news releases like the long-awaited roadmap have been kicked back into 2023. It does feel like momentum has stalled a bit, and this has been the theme for the last couple of years, really, with progressively longer waits between games and DLC. The hope, of course, is that in the new year, near the tail end of Q1, we will get a big-time injection of fresh blood, boiling brass, and infernal hype trains, and that 2023 will be a better year for the Total War franchise as a whole. Creative Assembly have done all but come out and explicitly confirm that Chaos Dwarfs are next on the agenda, and their big introduction appears to be slated sometime around March or April. So today, we're going to take a closer look at one specific element of the Zharr Empire, the Legion of Azgore, and their faction leader Drazhoath the Ashen. The Chaos Dwarfs will begin their Warhammer 3 debut in a manner similar to the Tomb Kings, in that one of their most powerful subfactions will begin the game in exile and at odds with the capital of Zharr Naggrund. Just like Ark the Black and the followers of Nagash, Drazhoath will have his own slice of the Zharr Empire, and might quickly find himself at war with Astragoth Ironhand, Zatan the Black, Shartor the Executioner, and the Sorcerers of the Tower of Fire. Of course, there's no guarantee those will be the 4 lords available on day 1, but as we've discussed in quite a few of our Chaos Dwarf videos before, those 4 are the most logical and diverse cast of characters we can expect, with Astragoth serving as the de facto ruler of the Zharr Empire, Shartor representing the Bull Centaur armies pledged to the Temple of Hashut, Zatan the Black roaming the plains of Zarduk, and Drazhoath the Ashen plotting his infernal schemes from the Black Fortress, north of the Scalded Delta. Along with the Tower of Gorgoth to the west, these twin towers, the Black Fortress and the Tower of Gorgoth, form the heartland of a splinter kingdom that has the potential to rival, or even overthrow, the High Priests of Hashut and the capital city of Zharr Naggrund. Tower of Gorgoth lies directly north of Emmerich of Caledor and the Fortress of Vorag, serving as a slave labor camp and mine from which deep deposits of ore are hewn from rock to further the war effort. It's also a center for the production of demon engines, where the pain train of the Zharr truly begins its locomotion. Think earth-shattering artillery trains that need no tracks, think gigantic constructs of magma and molten metal, given hellish life and fashioned into instruments of war. Its sister tower to the east is the Black Fortress, the main stronghold and military headquarters of Drazhoath's standing army, the Legion of Azgore. This is where the Infernal Guard make their home, and where the great furnaces of Hashut burn without rest to churn out arms and armor for their eventual return. The molten slag and polluted corrosive byproducts of their work is washed down the River Ruin, past Pigbarter and into the Scalded Delta, creating this toxic sludge that Kugath Plaguefather and the forces of Nurgle would describe as quite delectable, and we've seen them make use of that in the Warhammer 3 campaign. Which of course means that our champion will begin his campaign in close proximity, not only to Emmerich of Caledor, Trech Craventail and Clan Rictus, and the hordes of Grease's Goldtooth, the Ogre Kingdoms in the Mountains of Morn to the east, but also Helman Gorst and the Great Unclean Ones, playing with their poop in the Dragon Isles. Quite an interesting and potentially dangerous position to start, especially if he will remain at odds with the other Zharr factions, as I suspect. So the big question then becomes, who is Drazhoath the Ashen? Why was he exiled? Why has he been allowed to consolidate his power, and what could it mean for the Chaos Dwarf Empire if the Legion of Azgore were to turn cloak and march on the capital, triggering a civil war? Well, it's important for me to note that while the Zharr are certainly a very contentious people, outright war between their main factions is not particularly common in the lore. In many ways, they are a united race, or at least as united as creatures of chaos can possibly be. United in slavery, united in making sure everyone else's lives are a living hell, but they are united to a pretty significant degree. With that said, their political maneuverings are legendary, rumored far beyond the borders of their own realm, and these Machiavellian schemes can lead to slander, torture, assassination, or exile. So, Warhammer United is a very different kind of the United. There's still plenty of interpoliticking and all kinds of shenanigans going on that makes the stuff you deal with at the office look like child's play, as was the case with Drazhoath. Once a minor demonsmith, he was caught up in intrigue at court amongst the high priests and banished to the far-flung territories in the south by Astragoth Ironhand, the most powerful sorcerer prophet in Zharr Naggrund. At the time, challenging even one of the minor lords would have been an impossibility for Drazhoath, but over the centuries, the Ashen One made use of his time away from prying eyes, creating vast factories and slave pits to house the labor required to build his empire anew. Because of this exile, and because Astragoth is still the de facto ruler of the kingdom, Drazhoath's voice carries little weight in the capital, and he's still heavily disliked and ignored by much of the ruling caste. What they understand to an extent, but haven't fully surmised yet, is just how strong the Legion of Azgore has become, an army that is fiercely loyal to a Hellsmith and now wields the flames of Hashut better than just about anybody else on the planet. Astragoth's strength is waning. He's lost control of his hands and legs, turned to stone by the same petrification that afflicts all Chaos Dwarf sorcerers, and though he is still ancient and powerful, his days are numbered. So while the High Priests are right to suspect treachery, and still have the might to defeat the Legion of Azgore in open battle, it's not a sure thing for either side. Either way, it would be a Pyrrhic battle, and so there exists a tenuous stalemate, in large part due to the fact that Drazhoath's army would have to cover vast amounts of ground across acrid, windswept plains teeming with monsters and darker things before ever reaching the capital, and vice versa. The High Priest can't supplant Drazhoath in the Black Fortress or the Tower of Gorgoth, where he's consolidated his holdings there, and neither can the Legion march north and expect to overthrow the entire ruling caste of the Zharr Empire. Which leads us to the Legion of Azgore itself. Likely the second strongest standing army currently in the Darklands, it's a horde of hobgoblin cutthroats and the Chaos Dwarf version of Slayers patrolling the wastelands in the south, preventing ogres, greenskins, skaven, and all manner of beasts from encroaching on their lands. The elite element of their garrison is made up of the Infernal Guard and Infernal Ironsworn, a warrior cult pledged solely to the commander of the Black Fortress. Much like their cousins of the World's Edge Mountains, their stubborn and proud nature does not leave much room for failure or forgiveness, and those who dishonor themselves will willingly don the mask of the Infernal Guard, entering exile in Drazhoath's employ and searing molten metal to their skin. Unlike Dwarf Slayers, however, there is a road to atonement for the Infernal Guard. If they achieve great renown and glory, they can rise above their new station, tear off the mask, and show their now tortured flesh once again. The Infernal Guard have a well-earned reputation as fearsome, brutal, and disciplined warriors, and the reasons for this are threefold. Number one, with access to the furnaces in the Tower of Gorgoth and the Black Tower, their weapons and armor are a big step up from the already impressive equipment of standard Chaos Dwarf warriors. Black Shard armor is amongst the heaviest and impenetrable in the entire setting, on par with Gromril and Chaos Plate, and the fire glaives they wield are repeating handguns that can punch through shields, connected to a halberd bayonet that will give them AP and bonus versus large in melee, so they can defend themselves against monsters and mounted troops and force them into making a tough decision. Do they charge and engage the halberds, but silence the guns, or do they get shot to pieces by armor-piercing troops from long range? The Infernal Ironsworn, the elite bodyguards of the Sorcerer Prophet Covenant, wield ensorcelled flaming hand weapons, and they are even more skilled than their brethren in close quarters combat. So purely from an equipment perspective, this armored core is a step or two above the rest of the Chaos Dwarf roster. Number two, they are winnowed, quite literally, in a trial by fire, with access to top-tier training from the Infernal Castellans that run their barracks, to the incredibly dangerous and violent wasteland around their home. The weak perish quickly here, and the strong rise to the top. Finally, at number three, they have absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain. They are dishonored and discarded, stripped of rank, land, and title, anonymous in the eyes of Hashut, Father of Darkness, and the only road back for them is through being a beast, through winning every single trial that is set before them and coming out on top, which means they will very rarely take a single step backwards. They are grim, resolute, and unwavering, unquestioning in loyalty, and as such, they form the bedrock of an army that has an axe to grind with the High Priest of Zharr Naggrund, and might just want to take revenge on the people who originally sent them into exile. So, if any lord in Warhammer 3 is equipped for handling demonic threats, ogre incursions, greenskin invasions, and skaven uprisings from below, while dealing with what is effectively a civil war in the making, it is Drazhoath the Ashen. With a powerful army at his back, a massive and perpetually angry Bale Taurus named Cinderbreath that he rides into battle, and innate control of the lore of Hashut, Drazhoath will be an extremely versatile and DPS-focused lord, able to tackle a multitude of threats and clear out huge sections of enemy infantry with fire and flame. The great Bale Taurus he rides is an unholy union between demon, dragon, and molten bull, with a blazing body that functions like a mortis engine, melting enemy weapons and armor, and protecting it from harm. It has so much flame resist that if flame weapons were to attack it, it would quite literally heal it instead of taking damage, and its breath attack will function very similarly to that of a sun dragon. It's also a beast in melee. I mean, it's a gigantic flaming bull. It's everything you'd expect or want from a mount. The Hellshard Amulet gives Drazhoath the Ashen a 15% ward save and reflects damage back at attackers. The Demon Spike Crucible grants a large increase to Winds of Magic pool and recharge rate, while also granting bonus damage when attacking enemy casters. And the Graven Scepter gives him some juicy combat steroids and armor-piercing buffs when activated, which will be further amplified when atop Cinder Breath, taking a stunty Grudge Gnome with limited mobility and turning him into an Angel of Death on Wings of Blaze. As for exclusive faction-wide buffs, I think it's clear Infernal Guard upkeep reductions and unique skill lines will benefit them quite a bit with Drazhoath as their lord. Shartor the Executioner will buff Bull Centaur Renders and Toruks. Zatan the Black might have a heavier emphasis on Hobgoblins and War Machines, while Astragoth Ironhand wields power over the Kadai and Sorcerer Enclave of Zharr Naggrund. But of course, there will be a mix between all of that. Every single Chaos Dwarf Lord will have access to Demon Smiths. All of them will have access to War Machines. All of them will have access to Kadai. It's just a question of who will emphasize those units over the others. So I hope you guys enjoyed this sneak peek of what we might expect when the Chaos Dwarfs launch early next year. And as we move into 2023, we will be covering them even more in depth and spotlighting this absolutely insane roster in further detail. See you all in the next one.